Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Surfside Recovery Podcast. My name is Brian Licata, and we just wanted to let you guys know that if you or anyone is struggling with addiction, to please reach out to Surfside. You can give us a call at 609-709-4205 or visit us at surfside.org and all of our social media platforms. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Surfside Recovery Podcast. My name is Brian Licata, across from, through the internet, to Mr. Ian Koch, and our guest today, Mr. Roger Hoff. Roger, thanks for joining us bright and early this Sunday morning. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. Shout out to Ben for hooking up the meeting this morning too. We gotta get Goldman on one of these podcasts, Ian.
Yeah, we do.
He's gotta get on here. So Roger, you want to just introduce yourself to all of our lovely fans out there and tell us who you are, what you're about, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. I'll start off with the personal side. My name is Roger Hoff. I'm a man in long-term recovery. My sobriety date is February 11th of 2012. I seemingly recovered from a hopeless case of mind and body and spirit. And as a result of that, I've been able to re-engage with my wife and my daughter, and I'm living a life that I never knew that I wanted, had a possibility of having. And I'm just grateful that every single day I wake up with the desire to stay completely sober. Mm-hmm. So, it's an everyday battle. It gets easier, but it's an everyday battle. Where my professional hat is, I'm an interventionist and a recovery coach. I like to call myself a recovery strategist. There's so many different names in the field now of you catch a minute of recovery and you're out there, slaying the lions and throwing them into treatment, but not really understanding family dynamics and systems and all this, that comes along with, post work. So I'm with Recovery Care Partner. It was founded by Don Sloan, and we're a small cohort, and we believe in doing things right, which means that we provide hope at each time that the phone rings, at each step along the way. We provide the ability to support families and individuals. And my saying is, as they break free from the chains of addiction.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking helpful. I'm looking at the Recovery Care Partner website right now, and your headshot, man, you look sharp in that picture. That's for sure.
I look a little pumped too, don't I?
You look much more cleaned up in that picture, I'll say, than you do right now.
I keep behind my wall. I keep my last picture of when I went into treatment, and if you compare it to 3, you can really say, yeah, he was on the roller coaster. That's for sure.
I get those Facebook and like Google photo memories sometimes on my phone, and sometimes when I get pictures from back in the day, I'm like, ugh.
Oh yeah,
I did not look so hot back then. So how did you? You kind of laid some stuff out there for us. How did you go from getting actively using to getting into the position that you're in now?
God, that's really the only way. So, just to kind of roll it back, my story started with, like a lot of people, smoking marijuana, drinking at the bus stop, trying to emulate some of the older kids. I'm 53, so this is, started using when I was around 10 years old. So 76, coming of age, if you will. So emulating some of these older kids, seeing some of the older people in the neighborhood of what was going on and what they were doing. And it just caught me, right? There's a little bit of addiction in my family. And, once it caught me, that's all I wanted to do. I'm not even going to try and lie and say, I didn't want to grow up to be a drug addict or an alcoholic. And I really didn't want to. But as soon as I ingested that first substance, it was on. I was in love. I was awake, and I was running anytime, anywhere, any chance, at a family wedding, 11 years old, Roger sneaking up and emptying the drinks, right? Just to catch that feeling. I throw a little bit of special stuff in here now because we live in an age with the dark web and having things delivered to your house. The synthetics, we don't know what they are. But I was the kid that was getting chased out of hobby shops for Hoff Model glue back in the day.
Oh, dude, I went to Valley Forge Military Academy, and we had a major problem with the rubber cement up there. We got in trouble because we went from buying like a bottle and splitting it between a couple guys to the last straw was my buddy went in and bought the whole damn case. And they were like, "Why do you need a whole case of rubber cement?" And he's like, "Oh, we got an art project." Well, that ended up shutting down that whole situation.
So that's, things have changed, substances, but the desire of, for people like me that can readily admit that I was wired different when it came to this. And that put me immediately in some consequences that I didn't necessarily know what was going on, reacting instead of responding and getting in some jackpots. You talked about, military school. I went to a behavioral boarding school, and the behavioral boarding school didn't end well. And I ended up, being turned over to some facilities to be able to manage for me, it was violent outbursts, right? You try to corral me, you try to hold on to me, and I'm coming out swinging. And, my ass was writing checks that my heart really couldn't cash. And it just put me in that spin cycle of continually just escalating up until I'm finding myself in, detention centers and county jails for 6-9 months. I did an 18-month rip at a state facility for 9 years. I was in this spin cycle of, wash, rinse, repeat again, get a violation. It's hard to have a rep in a detention center when you're being held on a $500 bail, right? Nobody will come get you, right?
Yeah.
But that was it because my family knew I was safe there.
Right.
I might throw hands with somebody. I might get into some altercation, but for the most part, I'm not out there doing what I was doing before.
Right.
So that brought me through to getting clean in 1991. I just said, I can't do it anymore. Kind of woke up one morning and I just said, I can't do this ever again. And what came to me was, if I don't do drugs or alcohol, I'll never have to go back to jail again. And that's what I did. And there was a place here in Ellicott City, Maryland, that was called the Oakview Treatment Center. And there was this guy named Marty, and he'd come on like the local, rock stations at like 2:00 in the morning. And it would be like this. It'd be like, "This is Marty. And if you can hear this, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Oakview Treatment Center can help you," and
Ian, we should get some of those spots on the local radio station. I can do it.
I'm the last person people want to talk to when they're intoxicated. That's for sure.
So that's
Brian.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's what got me in 1991, and I went to Oakview, and then I went to a long-term treatment program in York, PA, and then from there,
Where'd you go in York?
I went to a place called Colonial House, and Colonial House is a little different than it is now. It was like 2 barns and a house, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I found 2 girls that really needed my additional help while I was there at Colonial
Such a
House.
nice guy, man. Yeah, very.
And I was
a nice guy.
And I was invited to leave, and my mom was not happy, and they let me go to a place called Williamsport up in PA. And in the early 90s, Williamsport had this it was called the influx. So all these kids and guys, they really weren't kids. I was probably one of the youngest kids there. It's 25 at the time, 26 at the time. They're all coming in from Newark, South Philly, the Bronx, Brooklyn. They're kicking in the house. These are kind of old, barren style homes from mining, and I guess it was railroad. So my first house, I was in a room with 40 other dudes on 2x4 beds, right? There was like 3 ranges in the kitchen, 4 refrigerators, and there was like maybe like 60 dudes in the house, right? Mm-hmm. And it was quite interesting. And I just said, oh shit, it's real now. And I got a wake up call, and I said, man, I better do something or this is not going to end well. And I did. I went to meetings, and it's 45.
But then you actually got sober this time in 2012.
So I strung a little bit of time together. I strung 11 years together. I stayed in Williamsport for 6 months, kibbled and bitted, 20 cents a day, $1 a week. That ended up being $40 to $80. And I was able to get into an Oxford house back in New York. So nobody was sending the cavalry to come bail Roger out. They said, if you want to be an outlaw, we're going to give you the outlaw life. And I had a little bit of that, but not when I was sober, not when I was like 5 months sober and I'm back living in a mission again. Right. And that's what it felt like.
Yeah. So what happened? So let's do fast forward, because I want to talk a lot about your current professional career. So fast forward, 19, so maybe 10 years ago, prior to obviously your relapse, what was going on then? So what were you doing for a career? And then
I got a job. So I came back, got accepted to Penn State York, did 2 years, went up to State College, finished my degree in accounting and finance, got a job at T. Rowe Price as an analyst. I went to NASDAQ as an internal auditor. And during this time, I'm surfing, I'm snowboarding all over the place. I'm living a dream, but I have all the other behaviors that come along with active addiction, chasing women, financial insecurity.
I'm going to assume at this point, no sponsor, no step work, all that's long gone.
3 years are gone. I just know that if I don't use, I'm not going to go to jail, right? But but I've gotten a hostage now, and that hostage is my wife, and soon to be my wife, and she won't go anywhere with me any longer. I'm getting in fights on airplanes and walking into malls. Somebody will bump me, and I'll turn around and just freak out on them, right? To where it gets to be like, it's on. So she says, I can't be with you anymore. I can't live like this anymore. Something's got to change. So it changed, I was on a snowboard trip in Montana. The joint went underneath my nose. And after being clean for 11 years, maybe a little bit of marijuana will not make me so aggressive. Not really.
And that was that.
Yeah, not really. Now I'm just
So then this time around in 2012, did you go somewhere to get sober?
I did. You want me to talk about where I went?
Talk about that.
So I went back to Karen in 2010, had an intervention, went to Karen, was able to string about 6 or 7 months just holding on, and got the job back. And the job for me at this time was I was a program manager for marine safety products. I was let go from a company that I was responsible for installation career.
Living in York?
No, I was in California at this time, so this is kind of jumbled.
You sound like
but
me.
You told me
moving all
to
over.
fast forward.
Yeah.
But the company sent me out to California. We set up an office. We were very successful. I was not professionally unsuccessful at this part of my life.
Right.
Personally, I was very unsuccessful. Right. It was just nasty. We can talk about stuff offline regarding behaviors and things like that. Right. But in 2012, I had lost the job again as a result of my behaviors, not as a result of professional performance, but as a result of behaviors. And they sent me a nice check and said, we don't need your services anymore. Just keep your mouth shut, wait for the deal to get inked. And I took that check and I went out and I started hitting the pipe like I'd never hit it before. The shame, the humiliation, whatever you want to call it, was on me, and I just didn't want to live anymore. So, on February 10th, I went and posted up in a neighborhood in Baltimore. I was strapped up, a lot of cash, piece of steel on the other side of it, and just started blasting on the street in Baltimore for about 10 hours, blast and blast and blast. I think the only saving grace was it was like a 1996 Jeep Cherokee. It looked just like a Baltimore City, professional vehicle that they drive and park, and nobody bothered me except for one kid that just came up and kept serving me and finally told me I had to get off this corner. And I said, I'm not going to get off the corner. And he goes, you're going to get off the corner. What are you trying to do? Kill yourself? I said, yeah, I am. I came home and got honest with my wife, and Don came back and picked me up and took me to Karen. And, you know, my behavior at Karen the first time, they said they'll stabilize me, but they don't want to treat me there again. So I got stabilized at Karen, and I went to a place called the Ranch in Tennessee. And it was right after Elements had purchased them. So I like to fish and be outside and do a lot of things. So I had a lot of the elements that I liked, and then started talking about, you know, the 4 agreements and doing some sweat lodges and kind of getting in touch with some of the underlying things that I have inside of me. Insecurity, you know, lack of ability to have intimate, lasting relationships, you know, fear-driven, high anxiety that I necessarily didn't think that I had, but the way that I would respond to things would say, yeah, you're pretty much on, you know, full throttle all the time. And from there, I went to a place called Renaissance, and I was in, which is another Karen program, and I did 10 months of day-night.
Florida, right? Isn't that in Florida?
Yeah. And had some issues. I had a little bit of issues down there. I was 44. The average age was like, you know, 26. I know how to cook, iron, clean, budget my money, be on time, and get on the van. 10
months in Renaissance is a long time at that age.
It's
a long time at that
when
age.
you get some of these 20-year-olds that get into the van and they start man spreading and turning on Drake, you know, I'm you know, I'm choking them out with the seatbelt right in front of me. Sure, you can have that front seat and lean it back a little bit more for me, baby. You know, and so, but you know what I had to learn that I got put in that position to learn how to navigate the rest of my life.
Right.
And without that, I would not have been prepared to, you know, come back to my wife and daughter. My wife specifically said, you know, she goes, you might be able to get sober, but I don't know if you cannot be that angry son of a bitch anymore. And that's the part that scares me more than anything else. And, you know, I stayed the course. It was a year. My wife didn't bring my daughter, who was at the time, I was 5. She bring me for a year. She said, you know, you abandoned me emotionally, spiritually, financially. You know, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So get yourself right, and then we'll figure it out. You know, and I wrote a letter every day. I never missed a phone call to Emma. You know, in the beginning, it was pretty tough. You know, I'm trying to work through Emma to, you know, to get back to hostage taking with Erica, to be able to break down some of those boundaries that, you know, the program down at Renaissance and Don and some others are working with her to hold those boundaries. And slowly but surely, I learned, you know, how to let go of, you know, some of these things that didn't serve me anymore. And I got in trouble at Renaissance. I got into it with a kid, you know, and they moved me off property and kept me at the day-night level of care, but I made every group on time every day. Got my job. My job relocated to another part of Florida. So they told me I either need to quit the job or ask for an amended like FMLA policy with my recovery job. Now, you know, I'm like 45 and I'm asking for an amended FMLA policy for recovery job. But you know what? I did it, and they honored it. And, you know, so I'm riding my bike, getting on a train, then getting on a bus to make it back for my evening group, right? And then figuring out how I'm going to get home in the evening. But I did it. And what that taught me was that recovery resiliency, right? You know, by any means, doing anything that I have to in order to get to the next spot. And I did that. And you can look at it as, are you going to write that 4th step? Are you going to take that 5th step? Are you going to carry around that amends list in your pocket like your sponsor tells you to do when the opportunity presents itself? That's what I had to do. And Renaissance really held the mirror for me to be able to do that. I did not like my therapist. We battled, but it was the only person that ever held that mirror, that foil to me long enough in my life to really see what's going on inside of me, right? So I can either be grateful that I'm sober today, or I can hate them, right? I mean, it's that dichotomy, right? I can't be grateful and hateful at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
so go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I was just saying, I mean, like I can, draw a lot of parallels to the stuff that, happened. And a lot of the stuff I'm hearing from you is like, you just got to keep moving, just despite all those outside circumstances, like you just got to keep getting up and keep moving. I heard a lot of that in what you were sharing. But what were you going to say, Ian?
So now you work with Don Sloan, who is an interventionist. And so you're an interventionist. So tell us about that. How did you are you actually certified through Pennsylvania by any chance, Roger?
No, I took Arize, the Arize
okay,
certification.
So you did the Arize, right? All right. So you did the Arize model. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Arize model and what you and Don do and how like all that stuff works?
So Recovery Care Partner, there's a cohort of 5 of us, and we all, I don't want to say we're all specialists, but we all kind of have our, our lanes that we operate in. And I came back, from Florida. Don had a halfway house and started, just doing some house manager roles there with him. Kind of got back into a little bit different line of business that I was in before. That started to die on the vine. This started to pick up with Don. So I started doing transports for him after he would do the intervention second chair. And then I went and did a training
and
with Bill.
Just for people who don't know, transports are basically you're taking somebody who's fairly resistant to going to treatment. You're making sure they get to treatment without stopping in Kensington or Baltimore on the way, and making 100%. Sure they get there safely.
And letting families know kind of,
what's going on,
who's doing it. This is my phone number. This is what I look like. This is, and what you're getting from me is what you're getting on the phone from the family, right? Right. That I'm, your family's, your loved one's safe passage is my duty, right? And that kind of, and I kind of put it like that, right? I'm not going to touch them. I'm not going to hold them, but I will redirect them. I will,
Sure.
It's real. It's right. And, so start doing that. Did a training with Bill Mahar out of Richmond, like action intervention. And then I did an Arize certification, training. But what I want to highlight is that, there's kind of 2 schools, right? There's this invitational model, which is Arize. And then you have like the classic Vern Johnson model, which is like the surprise and confront that everybody is so afraid of.
A lot of people aren't doing anymore. It's slowly going by the wayside. At least in the circle that,
like, and you Nick, have craft.
Nick, who is our, do you know Mike Wilson up in Boston by any chance?
Mm-mm.
So Mike has a combination of stuff that he trains people on. And Nick, our director of recovery coaching and director of outreach, was trained through that model. And it's real similar to the Arize, where you invite the person first, ultimately you're inviting the person into the intervention. It's not we're going to bag and tag you and send you to treatment. That's what I like to do, is just roll up and say, get in the car, we're going to rehab, which I've done multiple times, but whatever works, I guess.
So at the beginning, if someone's overdosed, if they're in a very dangerous situation, having that quick reaction is very important. What Don has kind of shared with me and others that have trained me is that if you can have a window to prepare the family, to have everybody aligned, to have some contingencies, you're going to figure out what's going to be the special sauce, if you will, because there is no right or wrong way to do this. What you need to do is you need to have compassion, respect, clarity, firmness, and accountability. You need to have those component parts as you move into this, because you can't build them after the fact. They got to be set up. That family has to trust you when they look at that loved one and they say, I can't do this anymore. And everybody says, well, I'm going to have to ask them to leave. That's not necessarily true. If you can't support that, you can't offer that. So where are you with what you're willing to do? And that's where you tease all that stuff out at the beginning, right? You know where the families are going to be. So we talk to the family. We say, look, an invitational model, your family will never be able to surprise you and say you surprised them. You bum rushed them and they didn't know what to do. On the other hand, if you let them know and they're a runner, they're not going to be there. So let's kind of lay out these two scenarios. That do you believe that they'll be there? Do you believe that there's an ability for them to participate in this? Or do we kind of need to get their attention on the first bite of the apple? And we talk about that. And we talk about, well, they're going to be really angry. Well, throw me under the bus. Let the tracks be down my back, not yours. Tell them I convinced you to do that. Let's just set that aside and start to begin the conversation of, have you even asked them to go to treatment? And probably like 70%, 80% of the time, they've not even asked their loved one to go to treatment yet. And they'll say, can we do that? And we'll say, yeah, ask them. And then my languaging is ask them to go to treatment. If they tell you, I'm not going to treatment, I'm done talking to you about this, say, thanks for letting me know. We're going to have a different conversation going forward. And that usually gets their attention because that's different languaging that they've ever heard before of, well, we're going to have a conversation about this, So we use, anything that we could possibly do to continue, I call to move the conversation forward with families. So if it's an invitational model to where we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about things and invite them and do it even though they're not there, or we know that they're a runner and we know that they're going to be at their girlfriend's house or they're going to be at home at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. And that's the best time for us to get them before they are either starting to get sick or they're high or they're drunk already. We'll take advantage of that. So I don't know if that helped you with that answer, Ian, but we use whatever we can to eliminate the no's. We all want to get to yes, but we want to eliminate these no's, before we can get them to go to treatment.
So let me ask this, because last week we had a gentleman on and we were just talking about like COVID, overall call volume. And it seems like, so I've been saying, I don't even know what week we're going into of quarantine. Maybe, I know Jersey is a week or two ahead of Maryland, but I think this is what, Brian, maybe like week 6 or 7?
No idea.
I just
6, 7, I've absolutely no clue.
I know I just made my 9th gallon of cold brew, so we're got to be around week 6. I think we're around going into week 6 at this point, because it was right around our anniversary, so maybe even week 7. Anyway, and I know in New Jersey and really everywhere, like call volume stopped. It seemed like all of a sudden rehabs are laying people off, censuses are dropping to 50%. All of a sudden, like nobody needs treatment. Our phone basically became silent. Seems like last week things have started to pick up a little bit. Seems like censuses are building. People are going to treatment. I will say, I know a few facilities that got COVID cases. They've handled it. To my knowledge, they haven't been like sneaky about it. They've, been pretty transparent, handled it, what I believe to be, appropriate. What are you guys seeing down there? Like in terms of COVID, call volume, people asking for help, families reaching out. Is it kind of dead at the moment?
By the way,
Surfside tends to be, right? Like we typically get calls while people are in treatment. So we follow, like if treatment centers are slow, Surfside becomes slow. But you're on the front end going into treatment. So you guys are probably more of the, I would assume, a different, you're at a different level where people are calling, right?
So just so you guys know, we have about 7 minutes left on the Zoom call, just
Cool.
FYI.
Well, I'm just going to blow it up and maybe you guys want to come back for a part 2. So I'm just going to be completely raw. We've seen some horrific accidents since this has been going on. And when I mean horrific accidents, I mean people overdosing and dying and being found.
Yeah.
Trying to get them into treatment and having them overdose. Not being able to be shoulder to shoulder and do this work is is really starting to get tougher and tougher. On Thursday, I did a transport. Kid was a guy, just, normal alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
Had been in quarantine, been having his booze delivered. Temperature was normal. Get him to the center, test 100. He's got a little hacky cough. They won't admit him. He's in active withdrawal right now. So he's shaking, he's retching. It's had a couple shots before he got in the car. And we scrambled. We called three other detoxes, and we were able to get him in. But if you do not have that collaboration, that partnership in this environment,
you're screwed.
You're beyond screwed. You're fucking with people's lives, and that needs to be said. That this is not just, we're going to take you to treatment and get on down the road. This is, you need to have these people on speed dial, and they need to be able to trust you, and you need to really know who you're working with, and on both sides, the professionals and the families. So we're still getting calls. People are still using. They don't know what to do. And now it's not, do I know how to talk to my family? It's like, are they safe to go to treatment?
Sure.
So not only are we talking about what's appropriate.
Is the treatment center, is the treatment center safe to have them? It's like that. Because if you think about it, treatment centers could be, in theory, the next nursing home, right? Like the way things spread. Luckily we're dealing with a younger population, but we are dealing with a population that is compromised.
They got battered immune systems.
Yeah.
So I had a family call me. We talked about it. Kid had overdosed, got released from the hospital, came back home. Grandparents didn't want to hold the line. 7 hours later, paramedics are at the house, narking him. Because they were afraid that it would be more dangerous to go into a treatment facility than to stay at home. And the statistics show 85% of people overdose in their own home.
Yeah.
So I'm throwing all these statistics out there, supporting them with, let's make a better decision. Let's get through your no of why not. And 7 hours later, he's having to watch his grandson get Narcan and get brought out by the paramedics in his house because he thought he was doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. That's what we're up against on the front line now. Yeah. What we're also up against is that the supply chain of heroin and fentanyl are starting to decrease, and we're starting to see doctors write scripts again in epic proportions like we saw at the beginning of the 2000s. So we are having a flood of prescription drugs coming back onto the streets again. Suboxone is almost a second thought now, from what I'm hearing about the ability to get and hold pills. The second, third maybe is that, at least in the Baltimore area, and I think that, Kensington and up around the Philadelphia, is the counterfeiting of Xanax is just through the roof now. It's just through the roof.
Well, and I know that it seemed like once all the ports got really shut down, the fentanyl has slowed down and the dope is crap, and everybody's used to the high of fentanyl, so now they're using, they're actually using heroin again. That's not nearly as good as what they want, and it's a mess.
So that, families are in crisis. They don't know where to turn, and now they have the additional wrinkle of, is it safe? What are the precautions? When I show up, we talk about proper PPE. We have masks, we have gloves, I have Lysol wipes. We do all these things. We talk with families about setting everything up until we have to be shoulder to shoulder. Right. We as a group had made a decision not to do any more face-to-face work. We're starting to look at what is, post-COVID environment look like, and how do we begin to ramp up to be safe to support these families to do this stuff, because we're coaching them through removing a door from a room, taking the Xbox, all of these things. And you can only do that for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks before behaviors aren't changing. And then you have to step in. So when we do an intervention, when we do recovery case management, ours is called recovery care monitoring. We look at a system of what's a win for you. Everybody says, well, sustainable recovery going into treatment. But the reality is that if that doesn't happen, what are we going to do, right? So you tee that up of what it's going to look like. Maybe it's IOP now. Maybe he's refusing or she's refusing to go, but maybe you can get them into that IOP level of care to where they're in front of a screen, at least talking about some stuff.
Doing something.
Yeah,
on that
about to
note,
get cut off, Ian.
Yeah,
Okay.
on that note, I just wanted to say, let's get Roger scheduled maybe for a couple weeks again, and we'll check back in and see where they're doing and how they're holding up. If anybody does need help, get a hold of us. You have the info. Brian will put that up after and before, obviously. Roger, thanks for getting up this morning. Appreciate it on a Sunday. And Benny, thanks for setting it up. We will reconvene with this in a couple weeks. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. That was awesome. I appreciate it. And stay safe down there, man. All right?
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
As always, if you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out to Surfside. You can give us a call at 609-709-4205 or get us on the web at surfside.org.